If you look at jihad throughout human history, what's been going on is really no mystery. They rape and they kill, and they claim a new land, but the infidels say that they misunderstand. It's a religion of peace, it's benign, and it's sweet, and they spread the deception to everyone they meet. But that's why we're here, ladies and gentlemen. It's This Week in Jihad, back again and better than ever with the great David Wood. David, there's
Yeah,
jihad in our nation's capital today.
there's a 0% chance, Robert. This is the United States of America. There would be an instant crackdown on anything like that.
Yeah, David, if it were 1967 or something, you might have a point. But this is 2024. It's a brave new world out there, and the jihadis are on the march. They have been demonstrating all day in Washington over their friend Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to Congress, the Prime Minister of Israel. This very bright gentleman was yelling outside the Watergate Hotel where Netanyahu was staying. And he said, Allahu Akbar, Hamas, we gonna kill all the Jews, and other things that I don't feel at liberty to repeat on a family show such as this one.
Yeah, Robert, I just posted on Twitter like 10 minutes ago that it must be so frustrating being a Hamas supporter in the West because no matter what you say, half the population doesn't believe you mean what you say, and they think you mean the exact opposite. So you're sitting there,
Yep.
death to Israel, death to Jews, death to United States of America, death to Israel, and they're like, and people are like, oh wow, they're so great. What a bunch of freedom loving, peaceful, tolerant people. Like, look, how can I make this any clearer? Look, I'm going to spray paint Hamas over here on this monument. Do you understand now? Yeah, we understand that you love us. It's like, my goodness, man.
Yep. Yep. So they were out there screaming Allahu Akbar at the Capitol as Netanyahu was speaking. They tore down a flag outside Union Station, burned the American flag while screaming Allahu Akbar. And so, it just once again made me think somebody should have warned them that this
If
kind of thing
only,
could happen. If only.
if only someone had spent the past 2 decades warning them. It's interesting. It's the exact same. I mean, it's the exact same thing everywhere. But it was just a couple of days ago. It was the same thing, and I'm sure you're going to bring this up. But with Hamas vowing to make the streets of Paris flow with blood.
Yep.
And
The
what are the
Olympics.
people of Paris doing? Yay, Hamas! Yay! Come on, do it! Great job! We really want you because you're so peaceful and tolerant and loving, and you're the good guys in all this. So please, by all means, make our streets flow with blood. We love you. And there you see the same thing in America. It's the same thing in the UK. It's like, again, it must be. Can you imagine? You're like, I know how to get my message across. I'll be as horrible and violent as possible and call for the deaths and the murder, the annihilation, the extermination of entire populations, entire countries, entire people groups. That'll get my message across. And all people hear is, oh, peace and love. That's what they're saying, peace and love. I'd be mad, man. What does a terrorist have to do to get his point across around here?
Yep. Yep. And of course, when they scream Allahu Akbar, they don't really mean it because we all know it's a religion of peace that has nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism. The New York Times told us several years ago that Allahu Akbar was a beautiful phrase that had been hijacked by nefarious forces. What's really wrong with that, David? Isn't that must be right, right? It was in the New York Times. It must be true.
Uh, Come on, Robert. You know if it's in the New York Times, it's absolute nonsense. Yeah, yeah, Allahu Akbar means Allah is greater, and that's greater than your gods, greater than your everything. Everything that you believe or hold dear, Allah is greater. And when they're shouting it, that is Islamic supremacy, that Islam is coming to dominate you because Allah's greater than everything that you're worshiping.
Hmm. So if Allah is greater, then that doesn't seem to leave room for the kind of mutuality, diversity, multiculturalism that the left is basing its love for Hamas on.
That is correct, and we see this with the like KFC Canada going full halal and
Mm-hmm.
so on, and they say that they're doing it for inclusivity and to support diversity and so on. It's like, wait, you're saying no, the Islamic way is the only way to make chicken. The only way that chicken can possibly be made in your restaurants is the Islamic way. Sacrifice with the chicken is killed with the name of Allah pronounced over it. It has to be by a Muslim. All of this is necessary. So the Islamic way is the only way to make chicken, and they say that's for inclusivity. And so
Yep.
it's just that's what Islam has in. That's the clearest example of an overlap with Islam and the political far left, because we always wonder what the heck do these things have in common. But they both love to take one thing and call it the exact opposite to deceive complete morons. So we'll take, hey, Islam is the only way, screw everyone else, and we're doing this for inclusivity. It's like the opposite, right? This is Orwell at its finest.
Well, I thought that KFC announcement from KFC Canada was fascinating because it said that we're doing this for diversity and inclusivity in order to serve all our customers. And I realized what they mean is the Muslims care that the meat be halal, and the non-Muslims don't care if it is halal. And therefore, they can take care of everybody by making all the meat halal. The small minority of people who think, well, I don't actually want to eat meat that has been, the prayers to Allah have been pronounced over, the money goes for halal certification, could go to jihad groups. I don't want to be involved in that. Those people are too small to matter. Too small
You
to
eat
number.
somewhere else. Yeah, you eat somewhere else. You eat somewhere else if you have a problem.
And
Go
so
to
it's the
Popeyes.
indifference
Go to
of
Popeyes,
the
which has
West.
better chicken anyway.
Oh,
Yeah.
much better.
Yeah.
But it's the indifference of the West that makes this happen. If people in the West cared, this kind of thing would not happen.
You're right. Because the vast majority of the populations are not Muslim. So yes, if the non-Muslim populations cared enough, none of these places could get away with it.
Yep.
So it always comes down. See, people keep looking to their politicians as like their saviors who are going to fix things. Until I've been saying it for years. If your population is massively ignorant and open to easy manipulation tactics, then you're in trouble. And it doesn't matter which politician you get. It doesn't matter what the journalists say and so on. You're kind of screwed if you have a population of ignorant people who will just fall for anything. So the solution, everyone who's watching, the solution is to have an informed population of free people, which is why we keep talking to the people here.
Well, speaking of easily manipulated politicians, David, you just gave me a perfect segue. Welcome to Doug Emhoff, who is the husband of Vice President or President or whatever she is right now, Kamala Harris, and that is her husband.
So he could be the next first lady.
Yeah, he's going to be the first gentleman, anyway, he's the second gentleman now, or something like that. And these people have to be given something to do. Now, why? I don't know. If you think about it, you go back to the 19th century, the wife of the vice president did not have some job in the Abraham Lincoln administration or the James K. Polk administration. It's only been in modern times, when we have this massive growth of the federal bureaucracy and the government is involved in everything, that you had Hillary Clinton as first lady and overseeing this massive healthcare reform, and then you've had all the wives of the presidents and vice presidents now have to be involved in some government initiative. So Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, has one of his own. What do you think he's doing, David? What do you guess?
I'm trying to think, because Nancy Reagan, I think hers was supporting literacy, and then you had, as you mentioned, Hillary Clinton, and then I think Michelle Obama was fitness and telling kids to get fit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's got to be something pretty far. I would guess combating Islamophobia or something like that, or LGBTQ stuff. It's got to be one or the other.
David, you're a genius, and that's why we have you on this program, because we only have the highest level intellects here. It is indeed Islamophobia that Doug Emhoff is dealing with. He's going to
Guys,
stamp it out.
guys, I promise I had absolutely no clue. I'm just thinking, what could it be? How dumb could someone possibly get right now? And it was, it was one of those two issues.
Yeah, and you know what he said? He said that we have no tolerance for any kind of hate. Now, a lot of
Really?
people.
Really? So they're going to have a problem with fight those who do not believe in Allah? They're going to have a problem with that sort of thing?
No. That's
Oh,
holy scripture, man.
oh, they're going to have a problem with people who object to it. Oh, okay.
Now you're
Interesting.
talking.
Now I get it.
But this is the thing. You've been often accused of being Islamophobic. I also have been. Now, would you say that you're a hateful individual, David? What do you
No,
say if people say
we're
you're just brimming with hate, frothing at the mouth with hate?
yeah, we're responding to hateful calls for the violent subjugation of the entire world. And it's amazing to me that if this guy were in the room, I have no clue. I had no clue who her husband was up until you just brought him up.
There he is.
But if this guy were in the room, and I were in the room with a Hamas sympathizer, and the Hamas sympathizer said that Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures. And I said, actually, that's false. This is one of those guys who would go, shame on you, David, for your hateful comments towards that person that hurt his feelings. You've got like half the population that's like this.
Yep. That is correct, sir. And that's why we're in the fix we're in. And you know what's funny about it is that while the stifling of honest discussion about these issues goes on under the rubric of Islamophobia, and the second gentleman is working on a government initiative to stamp out what we're doing here right now and what we do quite often. At the same time, the people who are preaching Islam have no trouble whatsoever talking about what it's all about, and yet nobody minds. This is a Russian imam from the Caucasus. You could tell because he's a Caucasian, and his name is. Huh?
Is he wearing makeup?
I don't think so.
Maybe he's born with it.
He's got a nice outfit, but he's. I don't know. He looks just like an ordinary white guy to me, a real Caucasian, and his name is Timur Kamaev, named after the great Jihad murderer Timur the Lame, or Tamerlane. And anyway, Timur Kamaev is from Tatarstan. And he is a very prominent imam there who recently released a video in which he instructed believers on how best to beat their wives. Now, surely it must be Islamophobic of me to bring this up. Surely a real a Muslim cleric, Russian or no, could not have and would not have recommended wife beating. Right, David?
Well, he could, but it's still Islamophobic for you to have any problem with that. I mean, you were on the show with Brother Rashid when two Islamists said that they wanted you both executed. And they still called you Islamophobes for not being on board with that. They still called you Islamophobes. So they called you Islamophobes 15 years ago when it was, no, you guys are making this up about Islam wanting to kill apostates and blasphemers and so on. You're making that up. You're Islamophobes. And they had to say we had a mental disorder. But now they admit the stuff. Yes, of course we're going to kill. Yes, of course we're going to do that to Jews. Yes, of course we're going to do that to apostates. Yes, of course we're going to do that to you for criticizing Muhammad. Yes, of course we're going to slaughter you all in the name of Allah. But you're Islamophobes if you don't want to be slaughtered. So
yeah,
that's how it works.
That show, I think, was a prime example of the just weird cognitive dissonance we have in the West today. Because you're right, the two Muslims said, yeah, we want you both dead. If we were in charge, you guys would be slaughtered. And the host says, now, how can we figure out ways to get along?
Yeah, and can we all unite around the idea of Dylan Mulvaney? It's like, wait, one side says they want the other side dead. And you're trying to build bridges between the two? It's the exact, it's like the same relationship with like Hamas and Israel, right? We want to
Yep.
exterminate you. And you got all these people out there. Okay, how can we bring these two sides together? Let's just make it one big state. Wait, one side wants to completely exterminate the other. You got to deal with that first. No, 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 no. Just push them all together into one big happy family. It was the same thing.
Yep. And yet the denial, it just seems as if people can't get their heads around it. And so they just assume it must not be true. Or they don't hear, like on that show, they don't hear what was said right in front of them. And so they go on as if it wasn't said. And meanwhile, everywhere else, Muslims are behaving as if they believe, they understand what the Quran. Another guy for you here. This guy's in Pennsylvania. He went to Penn State, Abington. Apparently, that's not the main Penn State. Penn State's Abington campus. I'm not sure if that's the main Penn State. Sorry, folks, but whatever. Anyway, this guy, I don't have a better picture of him. He's blurry.
I don't think the quality of the picture is going to help that guy, Robert.
Probably it's best to be blurry. But anyway, his name is, I love his name. This guy has got the best jihadi name maybe ever. Kamal Fataliev. So he's got fatal in his name. And he's a jihadi. And so hands off to the Fataliev family. Going into jihad was perhaps destined for them. But anyway, Kamal Fataliev, Mr. Fatal, he was going to Penn State Abington campus. He also is a Russian, actually. He's a Russian like the wife-beating imam. But he uploaded hundreds of bomb, poison, and weapons-making manuals while working part-time and attending business classes at the university. He expressed what prosecutors called radical Islamist views, and he spoke about killing a French model who he thought had disrespected the Quran. So that's Kamal Fataliev. Now,
Hey, wait a second. You're going after. I sit here all day, every day. I mean, look at this, Robert. Look at this. Look what they've made me do to this crowd. I sit here all day. It's like the same thing. I just said, because I can understand how much it sucks to be a Hamas supporting, terrorist sympathizing jihadi here in the U.S. You try to get your point across, and people just don't hear it. Here I am, day in, day out. Look at it. We did this live the other day. I made this awesome picture here of Muhammad for Jake, the Muslim metaphysician who was in that discussion. I made this thing of Muhammad burning in hell, drew it on a page of the Quran, and this guy wants to go after a French model. A French model. I'm sitting here all day, every day. And he's in Penn State, and he's talking about a French model on the opposite side of the Atlantic. What's wrong with these guys, man?
well, I'll see if I can contact him. He's been incarcerated since last year, and he's expected to be deported after he serves his sentence. But who knows? A lot of those guys just come right back. It's easy to get into the United States, so it's not a big deal. There are all sorts of examples this week, David, of Muslims acting upon what's in the Quran. And so, you got to wonder why they don't understand it in the way the Islamic apologists do. But maybe that too is outdated. Now the Islamic apologists are just getting upfront about, yeah, right, that's what it meant all along, but you're still a liar. Anyway, France. Always a lot of stories in France. And this guy was on the watch list, and he had a meeting with his probation officer. All right. Now, when you have a meeting with a probation officer and you're a prisoner who's been released, you generally, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't you want to make a good impression? Give the impression that you're being an upstanding citizen now and everything's okay, so they don't have to worry about you?
Yeah, as someone who's been on parole before, you try to make a good impression, so they leave you alone and don't bother you, and that the rough part is, if you're doing everything right, which is what I was doing, you want the person to know that, so they leave you alone. But even if you're not, you still want to make a good impression because you don't want them coming and locking you up. So either way, you got to make a good impression. Yes, no matter what the case is.
Okay, so this guy, you're gonna love this. In Toulouse, he went to his probation officer and he says this: "We, the warriors of Allah, are on our way. I will slit your throat as well as the prosecutors."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's to his probation officer.
Smart,
I,
smart
I
move.
don't know. I don't know how if he stayed on probation after that. He sent an angry email to the sentencing judge. You don't deserve to live. I'll let you imagine yourself dying and having your throat cut. So they're giving him treatment for his psychological disorders, David.
Yeah, I understand. This isn't a psychological disorder. This is someone who's convinced that victory is very near, and that
Mm.
right around the corner is a time where no one's going to have any power over him. And even if they lock him back up, he's just going to be freed because they're going to take over the area, and people like him are going to be freed. So, there's a person who's like, I don't care what you guys think you can do to me right now, because the most you'll do is like lock me up, and I'm just going to be freed because we're going to conquer this area. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do when the place is stormed? You're not going to do anything.
Yeah, this is true. What are you going to do when the place is stormed? You're not going to do anything. You could write that on the tombstone of France. They're not going to do anything no matter what happens because this kind of thing is happening all the time. That guy said he was going to slit the throat of the probation officer. I got another story out of France right here where a guy named, his name is Derek Riant, which makes me think that he must be a convert because Muslims aren't generally named Derek. And this is Derek Riant right here. He could, well, you could. It's hard to tell from the picture. Not a very good picture. Some kind of ID picture there, but he certainly has the beard. And anyway, Derek Riant was arrested on terrorism charges this past week as he tried to murder a cab driver by slitting his throat. He struck his neck. Where did he get that? What's with all this throat slitting?
I'll go with Surah 47-4 for 500, Alex.
I owe you 500, David. That's it. I say
Add
that
it to my
because,
tab.
people were saying, I see it every now and again. People say, you guys are so used to talking about this, you don't give the verses anymore. So, got to remember to give the verses for those of you who are not necessarily having the whole Quran memorized. Eventually, it'll be required. But right
Mhm.
now, it's still voluntary. It's good to know. You're forewarned is forearmed.
Yeah, and guys, I said it on Twitter, I don't know, several days ago, but I said, especially people of France with the Olympics coming up, learn that reference. Surah 47-4, 47-4, 47-4, 47. Surah 47, verse 4, which is when you are meeting the unbelievers, strike at their necks, strike at their necks. Watch how many attacks there are, unless those Qatari guys are just doing a bang up job of holding down security. If you do, I do not. I hope there aren't attacks, but you've got Hamas vowing that there are going to be attacks, that streets are going to be flowing with blood, and you have a bunch of people who believe in Hamas and love Hamas and so on. So you have you have at least some people in the population who are going to obey their orders, just like people obeyed orders from ISIS back in the day. So if these attacks occur, pay attention to where the Muslims strike the unbelievers. Just watch what happens,
Mm.
because when it happens, people will be totally confused and baffled by it, whereas we're telling you ahead of time.
Yep. Hey, you know something, David? Remember where the Hamas leaders were and still are, but where they were when they were watching October 7th attacks on TV, and then they bowed down and got down and prostrated themselves and prayed in thanksgiving to Allah for all the murdered Jews. Where were they?
Some other country, I don't know. Canada? No. Was it China? What was it, Robert?
Well, I believe it was Qatar.
Huh, weird.
They were in Doha in a fancy hotel, and
Must be nice.
they're still there as far as we know. And Qatar is the country that sent police forces to France to help them guard against Hamas. Because as you noted, I think it was before the show, but Hamas just issued a threat to France saying, promising rivers of blood flowing through the streets of Paris during the Olympics. So what if you got Qatari guards who love Hamas, and they see Hamas coming to mount an attack, can the French really be sure they're going to take care of stopping the attack?
Well, I mean, obviously not. But what else are they going to do? Anything else would be Islamophobic. So, I mean, what are they going to do, Robert?
Yep.
The,
It's
the Islamophobic option is always the one that's off limits. So if all you're left with is, hey, let's get a bunch of jihadis to run security for us against jihadis, we got to go with that because again, you don't want to be Islamophobic.
Yep. So another one here. This is interesting. This is an interesting story. Another one out of France. We could just do the whole show about France, but this is an imprisoned jihadi, Ali Riza Polat. Where is he? There he is. Ali Riza Polat. This is Bad Pictures of Jihadis Week. I don't know why they can't take good quality pictures of jihadis, but that's Ali Riza Polat.
Well, maybe they deliberately take bad pictures because they don't want people to recognize them later on when they're living peaceful lives.
Well, that's good thinking. So they just tell the infidels who are taking the mugshots, "Hey, make it a poor quality picture, please, because I intend to do more jihad." And they say, "Oh, okay, yes, sir." Anyway, so in France, this guy Ali Riza Polat, he is screaming in prison, and he's in prison for his role in the attacks in January 2015. He didn't go into Charlie Hebdo. He was involved in the attack on the kosher supermarket. But in January 2015, for those who may not remember, there were major jihad attacks in France.
Wait, hey, hang on.
Yeah.
Why would Muslims attack a kosher supermarket, Robert?
Well,
Makes no
David,
sense.
maybe it has something to do with not liking Jews.
But wait a minute, Rob. They only have a problem with the Jews in Israel, not Jews everywhere else on the planet. Come on. You're not making any sense.
Well, unfortunately, chapter 5, verse 82 of the Quran says that the people who are strongest in enmity to the believers are the Jews, which generally translates to just the opposite, that the Muslims are strongest in enmity toward the Jews.
Well, you won that one, Robert. All right, go ahead.
So, so Ali Riza Polat, he is in prison for the attack on the kosher supermarket, and he attacks a couple of prison guards with some shards of glass last week while screaming Allahu Akbar. And so he goes back to court, and he said an interesting thing. "I am Muslim. I am a believer. I say my 5 daily prayers, but I do my stupid things on the side. I never said that I was in the religious fight. I have no hatred against anyone."
Well, if they're wondering who the candidate was going to be for prime minister of the next election, I guess we found him.
Yeah, because he doesn't hate anybody. It's only the Islamophobes.
He said so.
That's
he said
it.
so.
Yeah.
He said the words. Words came out of his mouth.
That's right. And so you got to believe him. It would be Islamophobic not to
Be
believe
totally
him.
Islamophobic.
Absolutely. It would be absolutely inexcusable. All right, I got oh, there it is. Meanwhile, on a larger scale, Azerbaijan. We spoke about Azerbaijan a few months ago, how they had ethnically cleansed the let me get this guy spamming. You know, I got to apologize to all of you in the chat. I see somebody said, "Oh, David and Robert don't watch what's in this chat," and it's not that we don't watch it, but
No, this is we try to keep the show to an hour, and so if we're interacting, guys, I don't know what to do. People complain because me and AP do 3 and 4 hour live streams. That's what happens if you're paying attention to the chat. It goes on a long time if you're actually interacting with the chat. If we want to keep the show to an hour, just to give people a 1 hour to inform people about what has happened this week, we got to focus on. Yes. We got to focus on going through the details. And guys, keep in mind, every single week we go an hour straight on Jihad, and there's always way more we could bring up. So yeah,
and I've got quite a lot this week. Also, of course, unfortunately, there is the ongoing fact that while people who have super chats have a certain obligation to go through them all. We don't have any super chats on this channel. We've been banned by YouTube from any monetization because we are so evil and Islamophobic. And so please hit up Patreon, the Robert Spencer Patreon, if you'd be so kind. Support us at Jihad Watch. We do have expenses and we need your help to meet them. YouTube tries to prevent that because they would rather have the jihad proceed without being remarked upon. But anyway, there's large scale and there's small scale. You have these guys carrying out individual attacks, as we see in France, as the ones we were just discussing. But also, then there are large scale movements like the ethnic cleansing of the Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh enclave in Azerbaijan that was Armenian from time immemorial. And now the Armenian presence is being erased altogether. This is a church. This is, actually, I'm not sure I have the name of the church here. Oh, yeah, the 7th century Vankasar Church in Tigranakert, very ancient Armenian church, and this is a before and after. This is just last year. You can see while the Armenians were still there, you had the cross on top of the church. Now the Azeris have taken the cross off the church. They've kicked out the Armenians. They are planning to efface the Christian presence from this area altogether. And this is a very large-scale operation. There are estimates that there are 6,000 Armenian churches and other Christian monuments and cemeteries, this kind of thing, in this area. And people are afraid this is all going to be destroyed. Surely they wouldn't do that, would they?
Yeah, Robert, much like the genocide against Nigerians, Nigerian Christians by Nigerian Muslims, at least we're going to see endless college protests about this.
Endless. Yes.
Endless, yeah. It's going to be.
Because it's such a howling
students are going to be marching.
injustice.
Students are going to be marching for the Armenians, for the Nigerian Christians are going to, because they care. College students care about oppressed peoples. They say so.
But we have to remember that this is how the Islamic world was created. This is how all those lands that people think of, well, that's the heart of the Islamic world. Egypt, Syria, all of North Africa, so on and so on. That is how they became the Islamic world. That the non-Muslims were ethnically cleansed, were forcibly subjugated. The Christian or other, the houses of worship of the Christians or the other people who were there were destroyed, mosques built over them, or they were converted to mosques, like the Temple Mount, like Hagia Sophia, like the Church of St. John the Baptist in Damascus, like thousands of Hindu temples all over India. These things happened all over. And then the Muslims come in, they efface every trace of the non-Muslim presence. My family is from the Ottoman Empire. They were exiled for declining to convert to Islam. I know of another family around the same time, same thing happened, and they actually went back. A lady took her grandmother, about the age of my grandparents, back to her village in Turkey to see it. And they said, where were the Christians' houses? Where did the Christians used to live? And the people there said, there were never any Christians here. And it had all been obliterated.
Wait, Robert, your family left for the Ottomans because of the Ottomans?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. So Islamophobia is like genetic with you. It's like built into you. That explains a lot.
They should have stayed and gotten killed.
I'm just saying. I mean, I always thought like you were just, hey, where this guy came out of nowhere, just total Islamophobe, and then turns out your entire family line's a bunch of Islamophobes.
Yeah, actually, my great grandfather, they were in Çeşme, which is on the west coast of what is now Turkey, and they were getting out. They were getting onto a boat, but my great grandfather stopped and went back. Nobody knows why he went back to the house. But that was he went back. That's what we know. He stopped and he went back to the house. Çeşme is a coastal city, beachfront, and uh, this Turkish soldier was there watching them the whole time. When he went back to the house, he murdered him. But and the rest of them were able to get out at that point.
But what would that have to do with your family not liking Islam?
Well, they were asked to convert to Islam. They were said they could stay if they converted to Islam. It's actually a scandal in Turkey all over the country now because people are taking those DNA tests. And all these Turks are finding out that they're not Turks, that they're actually Greeks or Armenians who converted to Islam under pressure 100 years ago.
But
And some people get very upset about it.
well, that's weird. See, that's what I'm familiar with. Like people who are being violently subjugated but love Islam because of it, right? Like in the West, like the more terrorist attacks that we had, the more people loved Islam. But you're saying Muslims did all this stuff and then you didn't like Islam for it. It's like it's massively confusing. I thought that the more you're slaughtered in the name of Allah, the more you're supposed to love Islam.
Yeah, well, that's the way it works nowadays. But this was
Oh, okay.
1916. The
Different
rules
time.
hadn't been formulated yet.
Okay. We hadn't been given the
Yeah,
rules yet. All right. All
exactly.
right. Makes sense now. All right.
Yes, it's a new thing. All right, so I thought this was an interesting story out of Burkina Faso. It was actually a summary piece out of Burkina Faso in Central Africa. You have, or actually a little toward West Africa, um, the Group for the Support of Islam and Muslims. That's the name of the group in question. Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, the Group for the Support of Islam and Muslims, have been killing non-Muslims to such a degree that it is actually estimated that they have murdered thousands of people, and almost 2 million, over 2 million people, 10% of the population of Burkina Faso, have been displaced as the jihad advances. But, you know, these people, the jihadis misunderstand Islam, right? We're always told that. So why would this group call itself the Group for the Support of Islam and Muslims if it's going around killing non-Muslims?
Uh, I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what you have to do, right?
It must be a
If
mistake.
I mean, if Islam calls for the violent subjugation of the entire world, then if you want to support and defend the that ideology and the people who support that ideology, if you want to support Islam and Muslims, you have to go around slaughtering the unbelievers in the name of Allah. This is not difficult to understand, Robert. This is straightforward, common sense.
Well, there you go. It's not difficult to understand for us, and yet it seems to elude the whole world. I find that baffling. Anyway, meanwhile, we have the same thing being promised here. All right? We have ethnic cleansing. We have the Group for the Protection, the support, rather, of Islam and Muslims running rampaging in Burkina Faso. We have
But
the
Robert,
ethnic cleansing.
Robert, don't be too worried about that. Again, college students are going to take care of it for us. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Right.
they'll
Just wanted
go
just wanted that on.
tents for Burkina Faso. That's coming up.
Mhm.
Okay, we got the ethnic cleansing in Azerbaijan. We got the stabbings with the Allahu Akbar in France pretty much every day. And meanwhile, at a Juneteenth celebration, so this is not actually last week, but Memory, the Middle East Media Research Institute, sometimes they find these things a little later and they post them. Juneteenth commemoration at the mosque in Tuskegee, Alabama. Now, I just wouldn't have thought that you'd have a mosque there, and just bless their hearts. I don't understand it. But David, this fella, this imam in Tuskegee, he said the real hope for America is for Muslims in America to come together and to work not only with other Muslims, but with people who are concerned about the lives of our people. Well, that's very sweet. And he says,
Mhm.
don't take it lightly. I don't believe America can be saved unless we save it. It is on us to remake America. Do you understand? We are the men of Islam. Isn't he telling us the same thing is going to happen here?
Yeah, but it's in Alabama, so he said it at the Monster Truck and Tractor Rally with 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 Truckosaurus versus Fordzilla, and he got up and said, "Hey, I have a message. We can save you."
Yes, yes. Problem is, it's just going to keep on, and the people, Truckosaurus and all that, they don't know what's coming either. And everybody's lying. Everybody is dissembling about the nature of what is happening. And so people are going to be completely unprepared for what's coming. Here's a little bit of what's coming in a more benign setting, David. Over in the UK, this sign appeared on a bus shelter. You can see the bus stop behind, but pasted onto the ad on the bus shelter says, "Do not walk your dog here. Muslims do not like dogs. This is an Islamic area now." Now, nobody knows who put that up. So it could be that it was Islamophobes trying to make some point about dogs and Muslims. It could be that it was somebody who was making a joke. It could also be something that was absolutely serious. Could it not, David? What do they say about dogs in Islam?
Yeah, well, at first, Muhammad ordered his followers to kill all dogs. And it's funny, the situation was Muhammad was supposed to have a meeting with Gabriel, and then Gabriel didn't show up. And then Muhammad is all butthurt because Gabriel didn't show up. And then turns out that Gabriel told him it's because there's a dog in the house. And so Muhammad didn't realize there's this little puppy hiding in the house. So they get rid of him and so on. And then Muhammad issues the order to kill all dogs. And it says his followers are going around exterminating all dogs to the point where they're even like going out to the Bedouins and finding their dogs and killing them and so on. But then, as is so often the case, Muhammad's followers complain about something and then he modifies his message. So they started talking about, what about hunting dogs or something like that? He said, okay, you can have hunting dogs. So in Islam, there's no concept of having a dog as like a pet. You can have a dog for a purpose like hunting or something like that, but not something that like like is almost like one of the family that is in your household and so on. So, yep, not a fan of dogs in general still, but Muhammad was very clear that purposes aside, if it's a black dog, that thing has to die because that thing has a devil in it.
Mm-hmm. You gotta wonder what happened. What's the derivation of stories like that? But that's another discussion we will have eventually.
Hey, 1 second. I mean, here's what's weird. So Dihya al-Kalbi, right? This guy who's always over at Muhammad's house having private meetings behind the curtain. And then when people start, hey, is that Dihya al-Kalbi behind the curtain he starts saying, no, that's the angel Gabriel, who just happens to look exactly like this young hot stud, Dihya al-Kalbi, who was so attractive that when he came to a town, all the women of the town would run out to gaze upon him. That's the guy behind the curtain with Muhammad. Nothing suspicious there. But what's weird to me, I'm wondering if there's some connection that you have Gabriel supposedly showing up. So this could be Dihya al-Kalbi, for a little meeting with Muhammad and so on, and then he gets mad, but he says he's mad because the angel Gabriel didn't show. But there's something weird here because his name's Dihya al-Kalbi, which is Dihya the dog. So he's called the dog, and yet there's something about Muhammad not liking dogs. So maybe this guy, since he's called the dog, didn't like dogs. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet, but I think there's some connection, right? What are the odds this guy's called the dog, and this is the guy that they say is the angel Gabriel who meets with Muhammad whenever Dihya comes out and says, hey, we're going to have our private meeting behind this curtain. Oh, it's the angel Gabriel back there. But then something goes off with this guy really not liking dogs, and then Muhammad attributes it to Gabriel. And so anyway, I don't know. There's something there. I haven't figured it out yet.
It's very strange. And yeah, maybe, it would all come together if we could find a hadith that said they had some terrible argument and falling out, so Muhammad turned against dogs. Like the whole thing with the Jews. That first he patterns Islam after Judaism, copies all these Jewish laws, then they reject him, so he decides that the Jews are evil and puts all this terrible Jew-hating stuff all through the Quran, as well as all through the hadith. It's all in the literature about him. And maybe it's the same thing here.
Dihya got a little rough in bed and bit me, so I'm going to call him the dog now, and I'm going to kill all dogs and teach him a lesson what I do to dogs who upset me in bed.
It sounds like what's the guy's name? Abu Lahab, the father of
Yeah.
flame from Surah
Mhm.
111. Is Muhammad's uncle, who his name was not Abu Lahab, which means father of flame, but he's called that because he got annoyed with Muhammad for preaching at him when he was trying to do whatever he was doing all day. And so Muhammad called down curses on him and called him Abu Lahab, and that's his name forever after. And maybe Dia al Kalbi, that's not his name either. Maybe he had some other name. All right, Dearborn, Michigan, where,
Woohoo! My home away
yeah.
from home.
Yeah, well, I thought it was interesting, David, because Dearborn, Michigan is where, of course, you were arrested for talking about the gospel with Muslims, which is
I,
completely legal thing to do.
Actually, I was holding the camera while Nabil was talking about that, and they arrested me too.
There you go. And now we have this woman, Sorbeya Almosa, and she is kind of the American Salwan Momika because she is burning the Quran.
Oh, that Quran, yeah, that girl who burns Qurans. Yeah, I seen her. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I saw that she went to Dearborn.
she went to Dearborn, and our old pal Niraj Wariku, the most biased journalist in the history of the world, wrote
Legendary.
a strikingly fair piece about her. Didn't call her a hate-filled Islamophobe or anything.
He
Anyway,
must be he must be catching on and realizing we were right back in the day because that guy used to
maybe.
blast all of us.
Oh yeah, he's absolutely vicious. He's terrible, but he wrote a piece about her that was really remarkably fair. But it did not in it. It had Abdullah Hamoud. There's Abdullah. Abdullah Hamoud is the mayor of Dearborn, and it's kind of an opposite picture because he is not happy in this picture, and he was not happy when Sorbeya Almosa showed up and burned the Quran in Dearborn outside the Al Huda Mosque. And he posted a public alert on his Facebook account. Please be vigilant and report any sightings of the individual pictured below with a photo of her. She has recently arrived in Dearborn and expressed intent to burn Qur'ans. There have been reports of her driving around neighborhoods and surveilling religious institutions. And he said that he was increasing police patrols at houses of worship, which is totally bogus because, she's not burning down mosques or
Yeah,
churches or synagogues. She's
she's
burning
burning a book.
Qurans. And he says, for your safety, please do not approach her. Instead, contact the Dearborn Police Department immediately if you have any information. What do you think about that? I thought that was one of the most astounding statements. Call the police if you see this woman who burns the Quran.
Yeah, making her sound like a dangerous person who, if you approach her, she's gonna kill you or something like that, which would alarm more people. Like, there's this horrible, violent person among us.
Exactly.
I have to protect my family.
And yeah, and Sorbeya Almosa herself said, you've made it incredibly dangerous for me. I was not aware of this. He had notified the police. The police were at that particular location where she was going to burn the Quran, waiting for me. They were already there by the time I got there. And I don't know how long they had been there because I told nobody what time I'd be going there. So clearly they have her under surveillance. They have the police tailing her. They're acting as if she is some dangerous criminal when actually she's just exercising what is completely protected speech under the freedom of expression and the First Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Yeah, you have some okay police officers there, but that is a very creepy police department. So before the stuff happened with us in Dearborn, as far as the stuff that got massive media attention, I went there with a group that was doing outreach in a Muslim area. They were staying. They weren't going on the mosque grounds. They were on the public sidewalks around the mosque, and they're basically, because it's a Muslim area, so Muslims just walk to the mosque and they're walking home. They're just handing them copies of the gospel in the Gospel of John in Arabic as they're walking home and so on. That's what they're doing, right? Not screaming, not yelling, not protesting, none of that. Just handing them copies of the Gospel of John in Arabic as they walk home and so on. Anyway, we're there for a couple minutes handing things out, and then police show up. And they rally up all the Christians. Come over here, come over here, come over here. And they round us up in a little group while all the Muslims are walking home. right? So notice they stopped us. They stopped us from handing these guys copies of the Gospel of John. So the cops round us all up. Then the cop who was talking to us, he goes over, starts talking to the imam at the mosque in Arabic, talking to him. Then he comes down. He says, "Everyone, hand over your ID cards." Takes all our ID cards, writes down all our names and addresses, makes us sit there for a few minutes, and then says, "Okay, you're free to go." I mean, the idea, like, that's just straightforward intimidation, right? It's like,
Oh,
one,
yeah.
he stopped us. He stopped us from our constitutionally protected right on public sidewalks to offer someone a copy of the Gospel of John. We have, but he stopped us. I mean, so while he has us detained, everyone else is walking home. By the time he lets us go, everyone's already gone, and so on. But in addition to that, you've got a cop talking Arabic to the imam who's stopping us from handing things out to Muslims, writes down all our home address, names and home addresses and stuff, and then says, "Okay, go ahead." It's
That's
like,
incredible intimidation because they had every reason to believe that you all knew what the penalty is in Islamic law for proselytizing. And so he's taking your name and address in the presence of this imam, so people in the mosque who might not be altogether moderate could know where you live, could have done any kind of nefarious deed with all those addresses. And they knew
yeah,
this.
yeah. And again, that's before all the stuff like us being attacked So that was like 2008. And in 2009, we're actually Nabil and I are attacked. 2010, we get arrested and so on. So Nabil's having a nice conversation with some young Muslims and so on. So anyway, that's Dearborn. And then she goes there to burn a Quran because that's what she does. But she's the problem.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we got Adel Daoud. This is Adel Daoud. And you got to envy the man's hair, or at least I do.
We both do.
He's got the hair going. And,
like a lion, a mighty lion. A mighty lion of jihad.
Yes, the lion of Allah. He is Chicago. He's in Chicago, okay? He went to a bar. A jihadi walked into a bar in September 2012. And he pushed a button on a remote that he thought was going to set off a car bomb outside the Cactus Bar and Grill. But the button did not work. I believe he might have been set up by the FBI agent. It was a sting. And so he went to prison. He is still in prison, but he's got into more hot water. He just got 11 years added to his sentence. So he's got lots more time to grow the hair even bigger. And he attacked a person with whom he was incarcerated with a shank fashioned from a toothbrush. And I thought that was a piquant little detail, David, because, you know, we always hear, oh, no, you're not supposed to beat your wife like beat your wife. You're just supposed to use your toothstick, your miswak, to beat her. It's a symbolic beating. So this guy actually sharpens his toothstick and makes it a lethal weapon.
I have to clarify, Robert. That is not from Islam. I can vouch for the guy. That is one of the most common ways to fashion a sharpened object in prison. You get the biggest toothbrush you can find. They just file it on the wall for a while, and all of a sudden you got something that could stab. So eventually you get to guys who work in like a metal shop or something like this, and they can make something more sophisticated. But if you need something quick and handy, then a lot of guys would also. They'd keep the toothbrush in their pocket. You can't even see that the bottom is sharpened. It just looks like you walk around having with your toothbrush in your pocket. But everyone knows what that means. So anyway, yeah. So I have to defend the guy, Robert.
No, I'm not saying.
You're saying he's doing it because he wants to make it like a muswak.
No, I'm saying it's ironic that he can make a lethal weapon out of.
I just wanted to share that details because people like prison stories.
Yeah, we all love prison stories, but the deal is he did this because somebody drew a picture of Muhammad.
Wait, like this one?
Like that one, yeah.
Huh. That's funny.
And so
I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised that they let him keep that hair nowadays. Lots of places like where I was, they started making people cut their hair short because you can hide stuff in your hair. Like you could hide
your Islamophobic.
You could hide Your that's the other thing. You could some places allow like a religious exemption or something like that, or if you have some sort of exemption. But I'm saying you have your hair like that, you can have all sorts of stuff hidden in your hair. Like you
Mhm.
could have your shank in your hair. If anyone messes with you, and oh yeah, just brushing my hair. Ha ha! That's how you do it.
Yeah, I expect it's been a couple decades since since you were there. Probably things have gotten a little more relaxed along with the general decline of civilization. Anyway, all right, we got Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So we had Alabama, now we got Kentucky. Western Kentucky University. There it is. And I chose the picture with the mascot out front because they are clowns there. Because they allowed a couple of students attending the school in Bowling Green. They were active jihadis while they were in school there. One of the students actually left the United States after studying at Western Kentucky University and after working jihad there. He sent an email back to the school saying, Inshallah, when we conquer the U.S., I will look for you. Charming fellow, of course. Uh, but these people were, let me see, they were in 2014. They were in the United States at Western Kentucky University plotting jihad activity, and then they ultimately went over to join ISIS. And that's when the guy sent this back. But nobody had any inkling while they were at Western Kentucky University that they were active jihadis in touch with ISIS members. Because of course, any kind of suspicion on that of that kind would have been Islamophobic.
And that's an issue I've had for a long time with Islam, in that you have Muslims who don't want to subjugate anyone, and so if you're talking to one of these Muslims, hey, what do you believe? Do you believe in subjugating the world? No, I don't believe in subjugating the world, and they would be speaking truthfully. But if you have a Muslim who believes in subjugating the world and he's in the West, he's supposed to say, no, I don't believe that. No, I believe in peace and tolerance, right? So here's the thing: if you have a Muslim who doesn't want to subjugate you, he's actually peaceful, and you have a Muslim who actually wants to subjugate and slaughter you, they're going to say the exact same thing to you. So how do you know the difference? How do you know if you're talking to someone who wants to kill you and someone who is actually peaceful? They're going to behave in exactly the same way until they put a plan into action. So that's what's creepy.
Indeed. And here again, nobody in the West will acknowledge that. Nobody can talk about it. It's Islamophobic even to consider such a thing. A lot of deception, of course. War is deceit, said Muhammad. And so in Nigeria, a lot of attacks in Nigeria we haven't got to. Let me get some real quickly. There were 12 people murdered by jihadis in Benue or Benue. I don't know. Perhaps if any Nigerians are watching this, you can tell me if it's Benue or Benue or something else. Anyway, 12 people murdered there. Somebody there said, "We are tired of this daily killing," but it looks as if the government's either unable or unwilling to do anything about it. A Christian bishop, a Christian priest rather, Catholic priest in Nigeria said that there was an atmosphere of hopelessness. The Christians in Nigeria feel helpless. We keep encouraging them as priests, as pastors of souls, to be hopeful, to be resilient, but things don't seem to get better. Elected officials are just not interested in our welfare. And that is obviously in great part because you've got Fulani jihadis who are doing a lot of this killing, and they're the people running the government as well are Fulani. It's very likely they're sympathetic.
That's a really terrible part, and people in the West have no idea what that would feel like. You could, in a certain area, get a kind of little glimpse of it, like in Dearborn, right? In Dearborn, when we were at Dearborn, and something's going wrong, you have a bunch of people who have a problem with you. Ordinarily, you'd think, "Oh, the police are here to help us and protect us from
Hmm.
people who want to do something else." What do you do when the police are actually in on it and they'll go after you too? What do you do? That's a horrible thing to experience, where there's no one for you to call, because the only people you could call are actually people who will join in with them. So, but fortunately in the US, if you have a place like Dearborn, there are higher courts. So you can actually go outside of Dearborn and, sue them and stuff like that. In Nigeria, what do? People
Yeah.
show up to kill you. People show up to kill you. They kill a bunch of your people. You call in the government. The government says, what are we going to do? And
Hmm.
seriously, like, so the government is either complicit, and I'm sure it's a mixture. There are politicians who are complicit, and there are other politicians who are just scared. You don't want to be the politician who stands up and says, "I'm going to stand up for Christians against the jihadis who want to kill them." You just might as well paint a target on your back if you do something like that. So the result is you have the politicians who are complicit. You have the politicians who aren't going to do it because they don't want to become targets. And the result is that it's open season on Christians in Nigeria with no end in sight. And that's why Christians are saying this just looks hopeless here.
Exactly. So one last in Benue State, also 18 people were killed. The jihadis showed up around 11 p.m. Although a curfew had been imposed in this local area, and the jihadis were violating it, they called the people of the village together as if they were going to start to preach to them, and then they opened fire. So it's war is deceit, said Muhammad, and this is the kind of inhumanity that we're dealing with. But once again, we persevere. We know that we will be victorious in the end. You have to never give up, never give in. Pray, hope, and don't worry. And we'll be back with more jihad next time.